Live from Music Row in Nashville, Tennessee, this is the nation's #1 show for the family caregiver. I am Peter Rosenberger, bringing you 3 decades of experience to help you stay strong and healthy as you take care of someone who is not, someone who has needs, somebody who has special needs. Well, you know what? You have special needs, and there's a show just for you. It is the first syndicated radio show for family caregivers, and we're glad that you're here. If you're just driving by and you happen to turn it on and you say, what? I didn't get the memo. What is this all about? A show for caregivers? You stumbled into the right place. We're so glad you're here. If you want to be on the show, 800-688-9522, 800-688-9522. Write that down, 800-688-WLAC. And we'd love to have you on the show to call in and talk about whatever's on your heart and mind. But this show is about strengthening the 65 million Americans out there who are serving as a family caregiver. Maybe it's an aging parent. Maybe it's a special needs child. Maybe it's somebody with a traumatic brain injury, somebody who's had a stroke, or name it. There's so many different scenarios. But who's looking after you? And what does that even look like? That's what this show is all about, and we're glad you're with us. Caregivers with Hope is the name of the show. You can follow along on Facebook Live. We're streaming right now on Facebook Live. You go to the website, Caregivers with Hope. I've been a caregiver for a long time, for more than 30 years, and I've learned a few things. I am the crash test dummy of caregivers. And along the way, I've picked up a few tips on how to be able to live and function in this and stay healthy as you take care of someone who is not. And we're so glad that you're with us here. When you do call, you will hear the magical voice of himself, the Baron of the Board, the Sultan of Sound, the Earl of Engineering, the Grand Master of Groove, the man who is so sharp, it's like he's been eating razor soup. He is the Count of Mighty Disco, John Butler, everyone.
Oh, Peter, that was excellent. You flatter me. It's deserved, but you flatter me.
It's deserved. Well, listen, John, I have a very special guest in here with me.
And I did meet some people before the show.
Well, I have a co-host in Facebook Live. Aaron, scoot in here a little bit more. We're on Facebook Live streaming, and I've got Aaron Tornquist here and his father, Greg. I've known Greg and Aaron for 30 years.
30 or 40 years,
yeah. It's been a long time. We're old. And this month is Down Syndrome Awareness Month, and Aaron here is coming to bring his insights, and Greg as well, to talk about this issue that has affected a lot of families. And one of the things that Aaron has wanted to do for, you said it's a dream of a lifetime, Aaron, so I assume that you're right on that, is to be a part of a radio show. Well, now you're on it. So we got people listening in Salt Lake, Des Moines, Richmond, Charlotte, Gastonia, Winston-Salem, all over the Truth Network, Raleigh, Durham, and then through iHeart, they're streaming across the world, and we have a lot of listeners in Canada. So they're all listening to you, Aaron. Would you mind taking a moment just to say hello to them?
Yeah, of course.
You can get a little closer if you need to. We're sharing a mic for this, and then he'll go back over to his other mic in a minute, but he's just wanting to hang out here at the Command Center.
Yes.
So tell him, how old are you, Aaron?
I'm 39. I just had my birthday last August the 24th. I had my celebration birthday. I went to Graceland.
You went to Graceland for your birthday?
Yes.
That wasn't your first time, was it?
No, I've been there more than Elvis did.
Yeah. We got a live one.
I've been there more than Elvis did.
Peter, he's been there enough so that this time I just dropped him and his beautiful girlfriend Nicole off at Graceland and then came back to pick him up because I've seen it 10 or 15 times, and Aaron more.
Well, listen, now, was this Nicole's first time?
Well, Nicole's been there a lot of times, but my first time I went there, I was 16 years old, and I've been at Graceland. Every time I go to Graceland, I find about this Elvis's roots, where he's from, where he grew up, and I learn about his music, what he did.
Well, now, is Nicole as big a fan of Elvis as you are?
Yes, she is.
But she doesn't have the suits. You do.
No, but see, think about getting one.
Yeah.
Tell me about your Elvis suits.
What I'm doing is I am work in progress, becoming a Elvis Tribute Artist. Do not call personers anymore.
The tribute artist.
Yes. Tribute artist means the people who tribute to Elvis and his music career, keep his song alive. And what I'm doing, my work in progress to get my actual voice sound like Elvis. But I cannot lip sync every song he did, but most tribute artists had to do an actual voice.
And can you do some of them?
Yeah, of course. Of course I can.
Can you do a little for us now?
If you want me to.
I think we must. Are you ready for it, or you want to practice a little bit?
I'm ready for it.
All right. We're going to – you go for it. I want to hear it.
Baby, let me be loving teddy bear. I pull that chain around my neck. You can leave me anywhere. Just let me be. Let's be your teddy bear.
I'm jamming out. That's good stuff. Very good.
All right, Aaron Tornquist, Elvis Tribute Artist.
Yes.
And
yes.
Now you have a couple of suits.
I have some.
Now, do you know any karate moves like Elvis did?
Yeah, but I don't want to do it in here.
I don't blame you. Well, listen, that's great. Well, we're talking about Down Syndrome Awareness Month, and I want to thank you and your dad for coming over here. You guys certainly bring an understanding of this and it's affecting families across the country, and you got some insights, and we're going to talk about that a little bit as the show unfolds. Is that all right with you?
That'd be great. You can ask me anything.
All right. Well, we'll do that. And we're going to ask your dad a few questions, too.
Of course. Give him a shot.
Why not? It'll be his big break into the show business. Well, listen, we also like to do a tip for caregivers. You know, we come up with that every Sunday. What's a little thing you can remember? Because sometimes in the heat of stuff that's going on in a caregiver's life, it can get a little dicey. And so we want to be able to offer something you can remember to help frame the conversation. And as usual, today's caregiver tip, that's our caregiver tip music there. Some days you're the pigeon, some days you're the statue. That's today's caregiver tip. Now, let me unpack that a little bit of what that means.
Are you sure you want to do that?
Yes, I do. Because, look, we know as caregivers that we're going to take the brunt of a lot of things. It happens, and we see it, and we keep an inventory sometimes of those things. I get that. We all get it. And and we're going to be treated disrespectfully or unfairly or all those things that happen, okay? That's us being the statue. But some days we're the pigeon. And some days we're the ones treating other people disrespectfully. I think, the old adage, we pray for justice for everyone else and mercy for ourselves. And one of the things I'd like to help myself do as a caregiver and fellow caregivers recognize is that we are perpetrators of dysfunction, just like we accuse other people of doing to us. And that's important for us to realize because it allows us to function a little more gracefully and graciously in these things. Because when people do put upon us and do things to us that are very uncomfortable, that we don't really like or make us feel whatever, if we can remember that some days we're doing that to other people, whether inadvertently or intentionally, and if we can just remember that, it gives us a little bit more gracious. And we don't have to be tolerant of aberrant behavior. I don't think that's required of us, but we can be gracious and understand that the people that we're caring for and even other people that are looking from the outside, they're going to just do things. They're not necessarily doing it to us. They're just doing it. And some days we are the pigeon. Some days we are the statue. And if we can remember that as we move through our journey as caregivers, I think you're going to find that that's going to be a lot more settling for us to realize, okay, look, we're not singled out to be treated unfairly. We're not just woe is me all the time. But it's just part of life. And we can do it, and we can live a little bit more peacefully. See, the goal is not to right all the wrongs. That's not going to happen. We can't do that. But what we can do is learn to live peacefully in the midst of a lot of the wrongs, a lot of the mishaps, a lot of the frustrations, and just kind of quietly go about navigating these things so that we don't end up having to be stressed out and walk around with clenched fist. See, my goal for myself and my fellow caregivers is that we can live without clenched fist all the time. And that's not easy for caregivers to do. I know too many of them that are struggling. I mean, they're just mad. They're angry. They're bitter. They're frustrated. and one day we're going to, hopefully it'll be us standing at a grave. I can't promise that I'll outlive my wife, but I hope that I will, so that she doesn't have to go through these things without me. But I don't want to stand at a grave with clenched fist at myself, at her, or at family members and friends who didn't help the way that I thought they should have helped, or even at God. And the point of it is that we can learn to live peacefully right now. We don't have to wait for things to get better for us to be more joyful. We don't have to wait for this thing to go and go down a bad path and end up death, and then we get on with our life. This is our life. And it can be a good life, and it can be a meaningful life, as long as we stop somehow thinking that we're singled out for misery. Because we're not. Some days we're the pigeon. Some days we're the statue. So that's my tip for today on Caregivers. John, how about that? You got anything to add to that?
Just that, no, you did a delightful unpacking of that particular phrase.
Well, not what you would normally expect.
No, not at all. It works out very, very well. That we do a lot of times forget that the goal is to not be either. The goal is to, but it's that's a goal, and sometimes that's all it is a goal. So we have keeping that in mind will help make it a little bit more calming and settling, like you said.
Well said, John. All right, now listen. We spent a lot of time with John. We spent a lot of time with Aaron. We hadn't heard a lot from Greg, who is the senior member of this team today. And Greg and I met. I was thinking about this, Greg. When Parker, our oldest son, was born, I was walking back from the OR, and I was holding him, taking him to the nursery, and you were there. You were standing right there, and you said, "What you got there, Peter?" And I'll never forget that. You kind of peered at Parker's face there.
I think we were actually running a little betting with the nurses over when it was going to be and stuff by the time you came back.
You had a pool?
Yeah, we had a pool going. But I've been in the hospital a number of times with you and Gracie.
Yes, you have.
I
think you brought your guitar a couple of times.
Well, these weren't short procedures.
No, they weren't.
These were life-changing things for you and set you on the path that you're on now.
We're going to talk about that some more. We got to take a quick break. Aaron, tell them we're taking a quick break.
We're taking a quick break on WLCA 1510, Peter Rosenberger.
All right, we'll be right back. Thanks so much. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
I'm Gracie Rosenberger. 20 years ago, I walked for the first time on 2 artificial legs, and I'll never forget that day. That day, I not only walked, but I happened to see a documentary about Princess Diana's work with amputees in Southeast Asia. Watching her with people who now looked just like me, I knew in my heart God was calling me to reach fellow amputees with practical help through prosthetic limbs and the life-changing message of the gospel. Since 2005, we've done just that through Standing with Hope. It's the evangelical prosthetic limb outreach my husband Peter and I founded. By training and equipping local workers in developing countries, we are changing lives one leg at a time. We also collect used limbs, and we work with inmates at a local prison. They volunteer to disassemble the limbs in order to recycle the usable parts. A woman with a broken body working with broken lives in a prison to reach other broken lives in order to point to the one who was broken for us. That's what's happening every day at Standing with Hope, and we invite you to participate with us. Go to standingwithhope.com, please, and learn how you can get involved. I'm Gracie Rosenberger, and by God's grace, I am Standing with Hope.
For more information, visit standingwithhope.com.
Welcome back to the show for Caregivers, about caregivers, hosted by a caregiver. I am Peter Rosenberger, bringing you more than 3 decades of experience to help you stay strong and healthy as you take care of someone who is not, as you take care of someone who has special needs, and if you take care of someone who is dealing with any type of impairment. How are you doing with that? What's happening with you? That's what this show is all about, and we're here to provide practical help, penetrate that isolation that all caregivers struggle with. Caregivers struggle with 3 I's. We lose our identity, we become isolated, and we lose our independence. And this is what this show is all about, is going after each caregiver we can grab and bring them to a place of safety where they can catch their breath and then make better choices for themselves. If you want to be on the show, here's the number. Write this down, 800. I'll go slow for those of you in McDuncan. 800-688-9522. 800-688-9522 for those in McDuncan. You know, we hadn't talked about McDuncan.
We hadn't talked about McDuncan in a long time. You are don't be the pigeon.
I know they passed a city ordinance that said that we could. Hey, but we're glad you're here, and we're joining the studio here today with Greg Tornquist and his son Aaron, 39 years old. Aaron, who loves Elvis, and that's why we did a little Elvis there for a little less conversation. Of course, that's probably not the best thing to play on a radio show, a little less conversation, but we did that for you, Aaron, who is a big Elvis fan. This is Down Syndrome Awareness Month. Aaron has come into the studio today to share his journey as someone with Down syndrome, and Greg as well to share as these two extraordinary men. And this has been a lifelong dream of Aaron's to be a part of a radio studio like this, and so we're glad to participate with this on for you, Aaron. Thank you for joining us.
I'm very welcome.
Greg, as you watch Aaron, you delight in your son. I mean, you truly enjoy this journey, and you've watched him turn into this outstanding young man. He has a great job, girlfriend, a budding career as an Elvis Tribute Artist that he is working out all the details on. What are your thoughts on, as you just watch him today? He's having a ball, and you're having a ball watching him do it. I've been watching. You've been taking pictures with him. You've been doing all this stuff. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, Aaron has always surprised me from the moment he was born and a day or two after when they said you might not want to even take him home, he'll ruin your life, to that attitude changing up until today with him being now 39 years old. And he's surprised me and surpassed everyone's expectations his entire life, not only as for cognitive skills, but for his spirit. For Aaron is truly a person of faith, and he's a good guy. He has a full life. Not only does he work at Chick-fil-A in Franklin and has for over 3 years, but he has a girlfriend for 25 years, the same gal, Nicole. She lives in Brentwood. She's like a daughter to me. They're a wonderful family. And he has responsibilities at the house. I have a girlfriend in California, Chrissy, and when I go see her, I can be gone a week, 10 days at a time. Aaron runs the house. He's no problem with the dog, meals.
Parties?
I don't know.
Are you having parties while he's gone?
Parties, Aaron?
Is it pretty quiet at the house?
Sometimes I'm upstairs, yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, we're fortunate. We have a house where he pretty much lives semi-independently within the house. And I'm looking forward to what comes next. He talks about different things that he wants to do, and I don't put limits on it anymore. The struggle for a caregiver like myself, when you're doing it alone, and I don't think percentage-wise, there are probably that many men who do it alone. But anyway, are those 3 eyes that you were talking about. When you first made me aware of that, I thought, yes, I got him. Guilty as charged. And that is the struggle. But it depends on what you want in life. Everybody's different out there that's listening, and some have much bigger challenges than I have. But it depends on what your value system, what your priorities are, what your attitude is, how much love you have to give away. If you are a person who wants to accumulate everything materialistic and have the whole party, caregiving can probably seem like a real burden. If you're a person who believes that you're put on earth to serve other people, among other things, but to serve, then it makes it easier. And when I laid that down finally 6 years ago and just said, well, now it's time for him just to move in with me, and saw how well he did, it's been gives me something, an identity, because I've been retired a long time. I don't know. I have a purpose in life other than just loving everyone or trying to be kind and those sort of things. To specifically, there's someone to whom I'm the whole world on some levels.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. We're talking with Greg Tornquist, his son Aaron. It's Down Syndrome Awareness a month. And then Aaron and Greg are coming in to share their journey with this. And we're just thrilled. If you 800-688-9522, 800-688-9522 if you want to be on the show. Hey, listen, this is the nation's #1 show for the family caregiver. Now you're hearing why. Now you know why. Because this is what we're willing to take on. We're walking into all kinds of things. And we're so glad you're with us. Aaron, we got to go to a quick break. Say we're going to a break. Would you do that for us?
We're going to break. WLCA 1510. Peter Rosenberger, Caregiver.
We'll be right back. This is Peter Rosenberger. Don't go away. There's more to come. Welcome back to the show for Caregivers, about caregivers, hosted by a caregiver. I am Peter Rosenberger, bringing you more than 3 decades of experience to help you stay strong and healthy as you take care of someone who is not, as you take care of someone who has special needs, someone who is impaired, someone who is struggling along the way, and you're standing in the gap. How are you doing? How are you feeling? What's your emotional sense right now? How are you doing physically? How are you doing professionally, financially? All these things are in jeopardy when you put yourself between a vulnerable loved one and even worse, disaster. And this show is about strengthening you for the journey. We're not here to solve it. We're not here to eliminate the chaos. We're here to learn how to survive in it calmly, peacefully, and dare I say it, even more joyfully. And we're glad you're with us. If you want to be on the show, 800-688-9522, 800-688-9522. I want to thank all the affiliates listed on the Truth Network around the country: Charlotte, Gastonia, High Point, Winston-Salem, Raleigh, Durham, Richmond, Des Moines, Salt Lake, and then everybody listening, streaming on iHeart around the world. And particularly, I got to give a shout out to Prince Edward Island. You know, John, you're big up there.
Oh, yeah. That's my favorite.
John has a fan base in Prince Edward Island.
We had a call about that.
Well,
it worked out.
Obviously, John,
I do have many Canadian friends because the internet is a thing, and they have been nothing but glorious people. So shout out to Prince Edward Island, absolutely.
Well, when the show went syndication, I promise you this, I kid you not, I had 2 people that immediately asked me, "Is John coming with you?" And I said, "Oh, crap, we forgot about John."
Well, it's because, they left him. They left him on the airport again.
So, listen, we're glad you're with us. We're joined in the studio today with a longtime friend of mine, Greg Tornquist, his son, Aaron. This is Down Syndrome Awareness Month, and Aaron has Down syndrome, and he is 39 years old, and Greg was just giving us a great recount of all the things that Aaron does and participates. Aaron, you work?
Yes, I do.
And you've been working for how long, where?
At Chick-fil-A for 3 years.
And how are you enjoying that?
Oh, we're good. Doing things there. I'm helping clean the trays in the back and helping take trash cans in the back. That's mostly I usually do there.
Are you well treated?
Yes, I am. I was treated like everybody else had Down syndrome, yeah.
What about by the customers?
Oh, I love the customers a lot. They don't say hi sometimes, but I respect that.
But a lot of them have gotten to know you now because you've been there for some time.
Yes, there are some people come in there a lot. Yeah, sometimes my girlfriend, her mother walks down sometimes and give me a hug a lot.
That's good.
Yeah. And I've been with the Swabs for a long, long time. The first time I saw Nicole, Becky, and David, for a long time, they were living Nashville, somewhere in Brentwood called a Landmark Place. The first time I saw them when I was little.
Well, was this your first job?
No, my first job, when I lived in Nashville, I was about 4 years old. I'm working in different areas, local restaurant like Old Charlie's and Kroger's.
Aaron, you weren't
Goodwill.
4 years old, though. There's laws against that kind of thing.
Well,
But he did work at Old Charlie's, and he worked at the Baddour Center in Mississippi. Is a place that your listeners should know about for those fortunate enough to be able to have their loved one there. There's 180 Aarons on a campus that looks something like Vanderbilt, and it has Aaron lived there for how long, Aaron?
14 years.
Now, what is it called?
The Baddour Center. It's the name of a family.
Baddour.
Yeah, Baddour. The Baddour Center.
We'll link to that
in
on the
Senatobia,
podcast.
Mississippi, and they have approximately 180 folks like Aaron, and then staff of over 100. It's the kind of place that has an indoor and outdoor swimming pool and jobs for them. And he worked at FedEx and all kinds of places that would hire folks there to help them out. And Aaron did that for 14 years. So he's good to go to work.
Now, were you nervous when he started going out into the workforce, like at O'Charlie's or Chick-fil-A or anything like that? Did that make you nervous?
When he got the job at Chick-fil-A, that was totally Aaron. We were looking at Whole Foods and Kroger's and different ones that we had applied for, but we went by there one day. I don't think I'd even been in a Chick-fil-A. And Aaron said, I wanted to go in there and try. And I said, that's fast food. I'm not sure that's for you. And he said, let me try. So I did. He went in and applied. And a week later, we're driving by, and he said, I haven't heard from him. I'm going to go in again. He went in again, and about 5 minutes later, he texted me, Dad, come in. And I met the manager, and they hired him right then. And it's 3.5 years now that he's been at that Chick-fil-A. And for the most part, it's gone really, really well for him there.
Well, I went over there to see you when you were working. We had lunch over there. And,
I remember you told me about.
And that's when you said that you wanted to come on and host the show.
Yes, I did.
And I thought, well, okay, come on. And so here you are.
Yeah, I remember that time we had lunch together at Chick-fil-A, and I asked about I could be a caregiver like my dad, but I said, no, Aaron, your dad has to be a caregiver.
Your dad is a caregiver. And Aaron, well, the thing was, Aaron said he wanted to come on the show, and I said, well, let me think about that. And maybe we'll look at it for October, for this month. And I called your dad, and he said, it's funny because Aaron had just came up to me and said...
October 1st. I got a text. I was in California on October 1st. He said, don't forget to call Peter. He remembers. It's not just Chick-fil-A. It's also that he has Special Olympics, which have been huge for Aaron. He's been involved with that for another 25 years. He's been involved with Best Buddies, which is a great organization, and he has Mark, this fellow from our YMCA. He's involved with all kinds of bowling stuff.
Well, do you feel that you are kind of becoming more of a mentor to a lot of other kids and families now with Down syndrome? I've seen
1,000 all over the country. I was Special Olympics. I've seen a lot of Down syndrome people.
Do they look, because you're 39 years old, so you're a little bit more older than a lot of these kids are in these things. Do they look up to you, kind of a big brother kind of thing?
Yeah, they do. They look up to me a lot. Yeah.
I mean, you're a role model for all of them. You're doing what so many of them hope to be able to do. Yeah,
one time my dad lives in New York, and when I was there, I was at a place somewhere in Bond Street. There's a place called the International Down Syndrome Society. I met this TV show star, Chris Burke, on Life Goes On. And I was my first time I went in that place. I admire his show. What he did. He was younger.
Well, and you're a Chris Burke to a lot of people now. Did you know
yes,
that?
Yes. Just like when I was in California, I went through this place, and I did meet one person who has Down syndrome. And her name is Lauren Potter. She was a star of Becky Jackson on Glee.
Oh, okay, yeah. You told me something once, Greg, about Aaron. You said he is a wise soul. He is a wise soul, and I thought that was really insightful, and you said it with such pride and such conviction, because Aaron has this ability to walk into a situation and according to you, and I believe that because I've watched him, he can read things very quickly on people. He can sense things on people very quickly. Talk about that.
Yes, he can. His antenna is up, and he reads situations real well. When he sees anyone with Down syndrome, if we're out at a restaurant or wherever, he wants to go up to that person and talk to them like expats might in a foreign country. He gets to know them. And one of the things that I always ask him afterwards is, can they talk? And most can, some can't. Down syndrome covers a wide range of abilities. And then, can they read? If they can read, or if can they exchange phone numbers? And now, because if you can read, then you can text. And if you can text, then you're not going to be lost in the world. And it's an ability that I credit the Nashville school system with teaching Aaron how to read. And Elvis CDs, of course. He had to read the CDs, learn the titles of those songs.
Well, and for those who missed the first half hour, Aaron is a huge Elvis fan, and he is a Elvis Tribute Artist.
Yes, I am.
And he does. He's had many pilgrimages to Graceland, and Greg said earlier, he said he just dropped him off this last time. He didn't even bother to take the tour. Just, hey, you and your girlfriend have a good time. I'm going to go get some barbecue.
He's got it down. He
could give the tour.
Yeah.
I wonder if they'll let you give a tour sometime, let you be an honorary tour person.
I wish I could do that, yeah.
Well, maybe that's something to work on. Well, I appreciate you guys coming in here and just sharing this, because there are a lot of folks that are getting the phone call right now, a family member or so forth from the doctor, or family members are struggling to wrap their minds around this new reality of their life.
When you asked if Aaron, you said, I never heard anybody put it this way, that Aaron is like Chris Burke now to others. That's true. There's always someone in my life anyway that I'm aware of that comes to me, and over the years, it seems like there's always someone, and their granddaughter now has Down syndrome, or there's this and that. And most people have a really good attitude about it these days. It's not like it was 35 years ago when the recommendation was leave them with the state. Now people know usually ahead of time if they are going to have Down syndrome. And even if they don't, it seems that once the child is born, they have a good chance. They have a life expectancy now of 60 instead of 25 when Aaron was born. They have a chance. On the other hand, the number of pregnancies with Down syndrome that are terminated is near 90% in Asia, and 80% in Europe, and 70% here in the United States. 90% terminated in Asia, 80 in Europe, 70 here. So it's an unsafe place to be.
Yeah, no kidding.
If you're just a newbie. So, but I couldn't be more proud of Aaron. I couldn't be more proud of him.
What do you think about that, Aaron, when you look at your dad like that?
Well, I'm saying...
It's very emotional, isn't it?
Yeah. First time I looked at my dad, and he was having an episode with you before, and about the caregivers. I've seen a lot of caregivers, but some are not. My dad is the greatest caregiver all over this country. Yeah, I would say that. Yeah.
Really?
Well, I think that's high praise.
This is a love fest going on.
Yeah, it's getting a little syrupy.
Can't we say something jaded and cynical and awful? So that's like the rest of radio.
Yeah, that's my job. All right. It's like I'm gonna get my insulin because all this sweetness is giving me the beatus.
I think it's important to have this moment because so many families with special needs are not dealing with this kind of love. So it tears apart so many families. The divorce rate in families with a disability, period, of any kind, whether it's spouse or child or whatever, is almost 90%. It's 89 and some change.
Wow.
And it's brutal on families. And yet here you two are, and you're sitting here with nothing but admiration and love for each other and looking to be a source of hope and comfort to others who are dealing with this, which can be traumatic. I mean, it can be a traumatic event because you got the moment you enter into this world, you've got to be thinking way down the path.
Well, I have a wonderful daughter, and there's nothing wrong with her. And with a normal child, you have the expectation, anyway, that someday they will leave the nest and provide for themselves and have what we think of as a full life. With the diagnosis of Down syndrome, you know that that's gone. There is no driving. There is no military. There's the things that Aaron wanted to do badly earlier in his life. Driving was a big one until I told him that Elvis didn't drive. He mostly was chauffeured around, and he got that little white lie got past him. Hey, I take great pride in those. Not many do. Not being in the military. When I lived in New York, he wanted to go to NYU, don't we all? And there are certain things that we take for granted that we get to do. You can get in your car and leave here and drive off that Aaron will never be able to do. So that it's a lifetime commitment to something outside of what could be, and for me, fortunately, was a normal life in some ways. My friends will laugh because those who know me well, but they were my choices, and it didn't. Aaron and Down syndrome doesn't ruin a life. Down syndrome kicks open a whole other room in your house that you didn't even know was there. And all of a sudden you realize, oh, there's this whole other place we never explored before. Let's do it together.
Well, that's what you've done, and you really have. And Aaron, it's a treat to watch you. And you're sitting here. You got to see Aaron. If those of you can't, I couldn't do the Facebook Live, so that caught all three of us here. But Aaron is just eager at the mic. He's raring to go. He loves being a part of this. You're having a good time, aren't you, Aaron?
Yes, I am.
Well, listen, we'll be right back. We got to take a quick break. This is the nation's #1 show for the family caregivers, and we're about strengthening the family caregiver. And you're hearing today the love and the joy. It didn't come easy. It's a lot of hard work, but it is available. It's possible. And you can do this. And that's why I'm doing this show, is to introduce you to people who are doing remarkable things in a remarkable setting. You can be a part of this. 800-688-9522. Caregivers with Hope is the website. We'll be right back. We've got to do a wrap-up, and we also got some listener mail. This is Peter Rosenberger. Don't go away. We'll be right back. I hate to talk over CCR. I really do, John.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Welcome back to the show for Caregivers About Caregivers. Have you ever seen the rain?
Coming down on a sunny day.
Yeah, well, you know what? If you're a caregiver, you have, and you
Well, and if you're in Nashville, you did today.
Well, that's true. Thank you, John. And you're in the right place. This is the nation's #1 show for the family caregiver, syndicated on the Truth Network and streaming across the world on iHeart. And we're glad you're with us. 800-688-9522. And we've been talking today with Greg Tornquist, his son Aaron Tornquist. Aaron has Down syndrome. It's Down Syndrome Awareness Month. And they've brought their heart, their love, the journey they've had. Aaron is 39 years old.
Yes, I am.
You're getting ready to be 40 years old next year.
I know. I can't wait.
I can't wait. What are you going to do when you're 40?
I guess I'll be the younger man. And I'll say get myself 20,000 jumpsuits if I get.
You'll get another jumpsuit from another Elvis jumpsuit. Well, listen, 800-688-9522. John, I got to tell you real quick, what does horticulture and recycled limbs have in common?
I got nothing. I imagine it has something to do with Standing with Hope.
It has everything to do with Standing with Hope.
There you go.
Well, the recycled limbs part of it does.
Right, and you're not talking about horticulture as in tree limbs.
No, I'm talking about horticulture as in gardening.
Ah.
And I'll tell you why.
Gotcha.
Because those are two of the programs that our friends at Core Civic have for inmates.
Okay.
Inmates that are volunteer to do these special programs, and they're training them in horticulture so that when they get out of facilities at Core Civic, that they're prepared to go into a profitable and a meaningful work environment where they can have skills.
There's a trade.
Well, another one of the programs that they have is our Recycling Limbs program, where we recycle prosthetic limbs, not tree limbs, prosthetic limbs. And we collect used prosthetic limbs, used artificial limbs, Aaron, from all over the country. And they come to a local prison here where inmates volunteer, and they strip them down. They disassemble them. They have special tools and all that, and we train them how to do it. And then we take all those parts, like the knee, the pylon, the adapters, the feet, the screws, all that, and we ship it over to Ghana. I just shipped it over there, a shipment earlier this month. And then we buy a bunch of equipment and send along with it, and then we'll make prosthetic limbs for amputees over there in West Africa. This is Standing with Hope. Standing with Hope is the parent company of this radio show, of everything that we're doing to reach family caregivers. Standing with Hope has two program areas. One is the prosthetic limb outreach, which was started by Gracie when she lost both of her legs. And she said, I want to reach out to my fellow amputees and provide them with
now, Gracie's your wife, right, Peter?
Gracie is my wife.
There you go.
And provide them with quality limbs. You can see more about her at standingwithhope.com. And she just put out a blog post yesterday talking about a song that she sang this morning with strings. This morning, a beautiful string quartet that she did. And you can go out and hear it at standingwithhope.com. Get involved with this, because we are changing lives one leg at a time. And you
like that one, don't you?
Thank you very much.
Work on it? All right.
I did. And you know what we call that limb recycling program at Core Civic? Operation Footloose. As in, turn that foot loose so we can recycle it. And it's a great program, and inmates are doing that. But that's only two of the programs. They do horticulture, and they do the Recycle Limbs program. And you would think, just on paper, seeing recycle limbs and horticulture, that it would be related. But
Correct.
It's not. They're two separate programs. And it's a great work, and I want CoreCivic.com if you want to see more. The recidivism rate that they have is so low because of programs just like this to keep inmates from having to come back, because it's giving them a meaningful path towards getting back into society. And so we want to thank them for that. And go out to Standing with Hope and see how you can get involved with this, how you can support this radio show, or you can get involved with, if you know somebody with a used prosthetic limb, we'll take it. If we can't use it, nobody can. And if you want to sponsor a limb going over to West Africa to help get a leg up on someone,
watch it. Don't be a heel, Peter.
Step off.
Hey, I'm just trying to toe the line here.
Show some soul. It's a great program, and we've been doing it now for over 12 years. And Greg, you sponsored a couple of legs over there. Did you know that? You remember that?
No.
You did. You sponsored a couple of legs.
Well, there's whole years that I don't remember, Peter.
Spoken like a true caregiver. Hey, listen, this has been a marvelous time here with you all. And Aaron, thank you. Thanks for coming on and just sharing your wisdom, your heart, your insights. Have you had a good time?
I had a great time. I like to be in your cells and inspire your work.
Well, you know what? You can come back.
Cool.
I promise you can. I think you've had a great time, and we've had a great time watching you do it, your dad and I. And Greg, thank you for your wisdom, your insights, sharing your heart. It's been a great journey. Listen, we got to sign off. Tell everybody to go to standingwithhope.com.
Go to standingwithhope.com, 1510 WLCA. Join this radio show.
Well said. Hey, listen, this is Peter Rosenberger. This is the nation's #1 show for the caregiver, and now you know why. We're glad you're here. We'll see you next week. Thanks so much.